I love to DIY and decorate with wood, but that can get expensive. So what I like to do is go to the hardware store and grab inexpensive fence pickets to help make beautiful things, but on a budget. So come along with me today. We are going to do some building, and also the best part is these would also make great gifts, and you can also sell them for a profit. A huge thank you to Lume for sponsoring today's video, and a huge hello and welcome back to my whiskey craft buddies who are here each week to DIY with me. I'm so thankful to have you guys here, and if you're not already a craft buddy, no worries, just hit subscribe down below so you can DIY along with us. Now let's get into the first build. So before we can build, we've got to grab our wood. So I went to Menards, and it's just a Midwest-based hardware store similar to Lowe's and Home Depot to get my dog-eared fence pickets. Now you can also make these with pallet wood or reclaimed wood. You can find a lot of those for free sometimes on Facebook Marketplace as well. Now I'm grabbing the 1x6 fence pickets that are 6 feet long, and as I am looking at them, I am picking them up and looking straight down the board like I'm showing you here, because you can see easily that way if it's bowed like this piece is. You also want to make sure there aren't any huge chunks out of the pieces, and there aren't any like huge knots or, issues with the wood. Be picky when you grab them because that will make a better project. I got mine for $2.18 each at Menards, and that is similar across the board with Home Depot and Lowe's as well, same price. If you plan on doing multiple projects from this video, I would recommend going to somewhere that has an outdoor lumber yard. I'm at Menards, and all I had to do was go in, tell them I needed 20 fence pickets. They did everything. I took a sheet of paper to the front of the store, and then I could pull around, pull right up, and load my car. At places like Home Depot, it will work, but if you're doing a lot like I didn't want to have to load up 20 pieces on a cart, hoof it to the front, pay the whole nine. So here, I just loaded it up here, and now I'm ready to go home. The best part about this next one, you only need one fence picket. So for this first one, I wanted to make a box that I could use for a variety of different things for spring and summer. So the first thing I'm doing is cutting the bottom, which is a 16-inch piece. Once I got that piece cut, I needed to measure the width of the fence picket so I could create two ends of my box, which was about 5 3/4. In this video, you're going to see me using my Ryobi chop saw that you see me use in all of my videos. Now, if you don't have one of these to make the cuts, you could also use a circular saw or a jigsaw, or you can grab one of these from Amazon. It's a miter box here and a saw. You can line up your wood and cut it by hand. Fence pickets are great because they are not super thick, so you can cut them by hand whether you have a miter box or you just want to go hacksaw style. So once I had those 3 pieces cut, I could line them up like I wanted for my box, and then I can measure across all 3 pieces so I knew how big the front and the back of my box needed to be. So I'm going to line up my measuring tape here and get as close as I can, and I needed one that was 17 1/4. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces to 17 1/4, and that is going to equal out to the front and the back of my box, and then we're done cutting. So here are all my cuts: 2 at 17 1/4, 1 at 16, and then 2 at 5 3/4. I decided to assemble my box first and then sand, so I am just lining it up, and I can also use the side of my table to make sure that it gets lined up. I'm going to nail those 2 pieces to either side, and then I'm going to nail the front pieces and the side pieces on. Now, if this is being purely decorative and you don't need it to hold weight, you could also use a mixture of wood glue and staples. Just clamp it together and let it dry for a while, but that would be a good alternative. You can hand sand all of these, but because the cedar is rougher, because it's cheaper, I like to use that power sander. So you can get some very inexpensively. The one I have is under 70 bucks from Home Depot. So I will link it down below if you're doing a lot of these projects. It helps to have a power sander so you can fly right through. After it's all nice and sanded, we're going to go through with this antique white color. And I actually found this in our garage from a project that my husband did, and I really liked how it turned out. I like it better than painting it with white because it's going to give you the white look, but you aren't losing the wood grain, as you can see here. Then my last step was to add a pretty stencil to the front, so I'm measuring that 7 3/4 and about 5 1/2-ish once it was sanded down, and I'm cutting out a stencil on Quick Cover from Dollar Tree. I used the washi sheet setting, and I made 2 identical ones, so then that way I could stencil the front and the back of this box. Depending on whichever side you were on, you would see the stencil. This is a free file that will be available over on my blog, so just head to the link in the description, and there's also a tutorial video if you have not downloaded my files before. It will show you how to do that. Once I weeded it backwards like a stencil, so typically you get rid of all the negative space on the outside, I'm getting rid of what I want to stencil. I'm going to add my paper transfer tape from Amazon and apply it right to the front of my box. Now, because the quick cover is great for stenciling, it's not super sticky, so it comes up cleanly, but that also sometimes means you have to use a little bit of extra caution when you apply it. So I am just making sure to use my hand as well as my squeegee tool here to peel it back. And then once it's peeled back, I'm using my hands to make sure it's all pressed down before I paint it. Now, typically I share with you guys that you should do a Mod Podge coat beforehand, but one, I was in a hurry this day, and two, I wasn't worried that the lines needed to be perfect. I wanted this to look a little rustic, so I'm just going over the top with some gray paint with a just foam brush here. You can also use a disposable makeup sponge, and while it's wet, I am peeling it back. The last thing I needed were some handles, so I checked out the sale section at Menards, and I ended up finding these that were $2.99 each, a great price and really pretty to fit this style. I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape, press it on the back of my handle, and then I'm going to apply it to the side of my box where I want the handle to go, and by using those indents on the painter's tape, I'm able to know right where to put my holes. Once the holes were drilled, I was able to pop the handle right in and then use the screws that came with it. I used the shorter of the two sets to put it right in there, just like you would a cabinet handle, and voila! I love how this turned out. It is going to be nice and versatile for so many different things this summer. For spring, I'm just adding some flowers to use it decoratively, but then this summer at our pool, I plan to put utensils and solo cups and things out by the pool so people can easily grab things. If it's going to be near the elements, you will also want to seal it with a polyacrylic, which I will link down below. And I've also used this technique to make a ton of different options for the boxes, so it's very versatile. Now, once you know how to make those simple boxes, you can use the same technique to make other things as well, like this toolbox. So for this one, I'm going to use a 1x4x6 natural wood picket that was $2.35 at Menards before their mail-in rebate. So the first thing I needed to do was figure out how tall I wanted my toolbox, and so I cut off the top of two of those fence pickets an 11-inch piece so that we have that nice scallop for the toolbox. Now, you can cut that yourself, but as a beginner, if you get these fence pickets, it's nice because you don't have to worry about doing any angles. Then I'm going to cut a 15-inch piece off of that same fence picket for the bottom of my box. And then I'm going to approximate just about how wide it needs to be from end to end plus my two edges, just like we did with the other box. So my two sides are going to be about 16 inches approximately. So to see it in a different way, we've got two pieces at 16 inches, one at 15 inches, and then two at 11 inches for the side of the toolbox. And here is how everything's going to fit together. Then for the handle, I grabbed one of these dowel rods in the wood section at Menards. It was $3.99 and I went with 7/8 inch round. Then I measured it approximately to the width of the bottom of the box and cut it. Then everything got a really good sand, and then I ended up staining this with that white stain as well because I loved how it looked. Now here with assembly, it's the same thing as the box. You can either use your 1-inch brad nails or you could use wood glue and clamps to hook it together, especially if you're not trying to put a lot of weighted stuff in there. And I like to use my little pop-up workbench to help align things so I can keep my hands out of the way and stay safe while I'm using my nail gun. Now all my tools will be linked down below. I always get a ton of questions on my brad nailer, so just FYI, everything's down there. And I also had to trim down my handle because I cut it a little too long. So I just trimmed it down, and then I was able to line it up in the center and use my nails to adhere it. I ended up doing one nail just to stabilize it, and then I flipped it up on its side to add a couple more so it wouldn't move on me. And there you have it. It is a quick and easy build. And you could probably see my rookie mistake here. I ended up doing the lighter stain on a weather-treated piece of wood because it is a fence picket, so you can see that piece in the back. But you could do whatever you want on it. You could add whatever kind of stencils to the side. I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for yet, so I left it blank for now. But even blank, it looks really pretty with these tulips in there. These are faux tulips from Kirkland's. I will link them down below. They're so pretty, and it really adds to the box. Filming this video, I was running in and out of my house grabbing supplies, going from my house slippers to my outside slip-on shoes, and I usually am not a fan of wearing socks. The downside to that is that my feet can get stinky. That's embarrassing, but we're all friends here, right? I have been trying Lume's Invisible Cream Whole Body Deodorant on my feet, and you guys, it's been a game changer. Lume is aluminum-free, baking soda-free, and paraben-free. It's also pH balanced for safe use anywhere on your body, not just your feet, but also armpits and beyond. An OBGYN created Lume when she saw normal BO being diagnosed as other things, and instead of masking the odor with fragrance, Lume uses mandelic acid, which proactively stops the odor before it starts. Lume comes in a variety of fresh scents like lavender sage, toasted coconut, and my favorite, clean tangerine. And you guys know I also love supporting women-owned businesses. If this piqued your interest, Lume makes it really easy to try out their products with their starter pack. It has the invisible cream inside, which this is what I've been using on my feet. Also, this smooth solid, which is what you would think of when you think of deodorant. And I've been trying this and it's been nice because I'll wear it for a whole day. I'll get up to shower the next morning and I still feel fresh. And then you also have your choice of 2 other items. In my box, I did the deodorant wipes and then I also did this body wash. As a Whiskey Craft Buddy, Lume is giving you $5 off their starter pack, so you can get that deal by heading down to the description, clicking the link, and using my code Whiskey and Whit. That coupon is equivalent to 40% off the starter pack, and it ships free. Now let's get back into the builds. One of my favorite websites to peruse is Anna White's website, and I saw plans for these cedar boxes, and I knew I had to do it, especially because it was under $10 to build with the hardware. So for this, you're going to need some furring strips. So I ended up grabbing a couple of those, and it's the same thing as the fence pickets. Look down them to make sure that they aren't bowed. And then you're also going to need a couple fence pickets for the outside. I started by going through following the plans with the cut list from annawhite.com, and I will link that all down below so you can check it out and her instructions as well. They have visuals if you're like more of a photo person. So here's a quick breakdown of the cut list. We're going to do 4 pieces of the fence pickets at 13.5, 4 at 13 inches, 2 at 12 inches, and then the furring strips, we've got 10.5 inch pieces and 13.5 inch pieces. We're going to go through just like all the other projects, give it a really good sand with some 80 grit sandpaper, and then I stained every single piece with Early American. I thought this would be a lot easier to stain the pieces individually instead of trying to get in the nooks and crannies once it was assembled. You could also leave it unfinished. So the first step is to take your 13.5 inch furring strip piece and hook 2 of your 10.5 inch pieces to it to make kind of this like pie symbol shape. I'm using brad nails to hook them and using my table to kind of lay everything flat. And then I'm grabbing 2 of my 13.5 inch pieces of fence picket to hook it on, and we're just creating one side of the box. I used 3 nails up either side, and you want to make sure you go right into that 1x2. I'm going to repeat the same step for the other side, and then once you have both sides, we're going to line it up and take our next smallest piece, which is 13 inch cedar pickets, line them up with the other pieces, and nail right into that 1x2. You can also nail into the other fence picket, but you want to make sure structurally you've got nails from the fence picket into the 1x2. We're going to flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, and it's starting to come into a box shape. Once that's all hooked, we are going to add the 2 additional 10.5 inch pieces to either side of the inside of the box. That way, that is going to help create a full square in the bottom and stabilize it. And then on the plans, it said you were supposed to put 2 12 inch pieces in the bottom and they were just supposed to fit. Well, one fit beautifully, the other one not so much. So I went through with my little square ruler, lined everything up, and then I had to rip down the side with my jigsaw because I do not have a table saw. So I just trimmed it down, and if you don't have a jigsaw, you could also use your power sander as like kind of like a nail file to file it down. But once I did that, I was able to slide it right in, and then with everything on the bottom, it was nice and flush. So that was the only little tweak that I made to the project. Then I had some extra hardware left over from the boxes at the beginning because I bought a bunch of them because they were on sale. I just pushed it into the cedar where I wanted it to go to give myself a mark on where to drill. It's a really soft wood, so as long as you just push it in hard, it's going to give you that mark. I drilled 2 holes, popped it in, and voila! They're going to be great for storage, but also I made an extra one, so I had it for when I needed to go to a party or I needed to take a housewarming gift or whatever. How cute would this be with a little bit of tissue, a bottle of wine, or something for a baby shower, bridal shower? You could stencil on the side, or you can just have this as decor in your home with some flowers and blankets like I'm showing here. Easy peasy, beautiful. And I also love that they fit inside these cube storage organizers as well, so I could also use it for Finn's toys. Ever since we moved in last fall, I've been dying to make some planters, and I found this plan also from Anna White. I just love her site. Be sure to check it out if you like to build with wood. You will be like a kid in the candy store. So with these, they are, again, built with fence pickets. And let's break down real quick what you're going to need. So for each planter, I made 2, but for each individual one, you're going to need 4 large fence pickets at 6 feet long. We're going to need 3 1x2x8 furring strips and 2 1x3x8 furring strips. With the furring strips, it made all of the lumber under $15 to build one of the planters, so both of them come in under $30. Now for the cut list, you are going to do 6 pieces of fence picket at 18 inches long, 6 pieces at 17 inches long. We also need 4 1x2s at 18.5 inches long, and the same thing, 4 1x3s at 18.5 inches long. Those are going to be our legs. And then you're also going to need to keep some of your pickets as scrap, and then 1x2s for finishing later on, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So once we have all of those cut, we are going to sand them down per usual, and then we're going to assemble our legs. I did this kind of in an interesting order, and that was because I wanted the two-tone look, and so I needed to stain pieces separately so I didn't have to try to tape and stain and do all of that. So I am taking 2 of my 1x2 pieces along with my 1x3, using some wood glue and my nailer to attach them in kind of a bracket L shape. The second 1x2 is just there for support, so then that way the 1x3 isn't flopping around everywhere. Once I made all of my legs, so it's going to be 8 for 2 planters, I went through with jet black stain from Varathane, and I love this because you can still see the wood grain, but it's going to give it that dark black modern look. I also did all of the fence pickets in Early American from Minwax. Varathane also has an Early American color that I like. Let them dry overnight, and then we're going to assemble. So we're going to start by putting the 2 legs down with the 1x3s on the bottom. Then we're going to take our 18-inch pieces of stained pickets, line them up, flush them with the top of those 1x3 kind of brackets, and then we're going to use the nails to attach them. This is the same process of the toy box that we made for Finn a couple years ago, and I love the way that she does in her plans the legs, and so this was easy for me to follow, and once you start doing it, you will get the hang of it. Repeat that step again, and then you're going to put the 2 sides with the 1x2s down like this on the flat ground, and add the 3 17-inch pieces on one side, nail them the exact same way, and then we'll flip it over and do the 17-inch pieces on the other side to create our planter box. So now that we have this, it's not super structurally sound, it will kind of move around, so we want to measure the sides with our 1x3s to figure out what our first piece of trim is going to be. I cut 2 of those, and then I measured in between, and it was about 16 inches, so then I cut 2 more pieces. I stained all 4 of the pieces for each of the planters that black color, and then once those were dry, I was able to attach them with some brad nails again. Now I'm going directly into those leg braces first, and then I'm doing a couple just additional for good measure into the top of the fence picket on either side. So the last thing we got to think about is how are we going to keep our planted stuff in there? So I'm adding a little shelf to the bottom with scrap 1x2. So down here I lined up my 1x2s with the top edge of the fence picket. So there's 3 there. It's on the top of the bottom one. I stuck those pieces down, and then these I can remove, but there's nice drainage. And then you can either put like landscaping fabric over the top, or you can go ahead and put your pot right on top of here. I'm choosing not to nail down my fence picket pieces into the 1x2 so I can move it around. For now, I'm going to use this planter from Home Depot that fit perfectly in there. I really like the two-tone look here, and I am going to also do a transparent waterproofing wood finish that you can use on decks, just so everything is sealed, because I live in Illinois and you never know what the weather's going to be like. I'm really excited for this spring and summer because I'm going to put these next to the stairs going up to our pool. This next one's great because it's another one fence picket project, and it's this really sweet birdhouse. Now I wanted to make one for decor, but you could also have this function outside for birds. This is another Anna White plan. I told you guys she has such good plans over there. Be sure to check out her page. So much of my wood plans have come from her because it's just amazing. So I'm going to cut it down into these pieces for the cut list, and to add that little house shape, which you can also use this just to make little signs that look like houses, measure to the center of your board, and then you can adjust your saw to cut a 45-degree angle on one side, flip it over, and do the same thing. This is another thing you could easily do with that miter box from Amazon. I'm going to make sure everything is nice and sanded down, and you can either assemble it unfinished, or I decided to do the Early American Stain by Minwax. I really like that deep dark finish. Then I'm using the largest drill bit I have to create an opening, but you could also use a scroll or jigsaw to make it a lot larger depending on the birds you're trying to attract if you're going to use it as a traditional birdhouse. Then it is really easy to assemble, and you can also get kiddos involved with wood glue. Obviously not the nail gun if you're choosing to use that to reinforce it, but especially if it's just for decor. In the future, I'll just do it with wood glue because I had a couple nail pops, which happen, but just FYI, I would just do the wood glue and clamps moving forward. But we're going to do the back of the house flush with the back of one of our longer pieces. We're going to add our two sides, and I'm doing nails into the back as well as the bottom. We're going to add the other side and the front of our house, and then the last step is to add the roof. Now in the Anna White plans, it says you need to rip down one of these pieces so that it's shorter because of your angle at the top. I, again, like I said, don't have a table saw, and I really didn't want to do it with a jigsaw, and it actually worked out fine, so you don't need to rip it down if you don't want to. Just add one, overlap it, nail it all down, and then if you can remove any of those nail pops or fold them up. I just had this one at the top, but I think I might add some embellishments, so I think it'll be okay. Total cost, $218. This next one is also a great technique that once you know how to do it, you could apply it to a variety of different things. This started when I made this Haunted Mansion sign. I made a Polar Express for Christmas, and then I wanted to make a spring one for my hanging post because it's been empty since Christmas. So I started by measuring my last sign and kind of cutting it to size. So these ended up being 19 inches long, but you could make these pieces as long or as short as you want. Now, once you have as many pieces wide as you want, which mine ended up being 3, you're going to lay them out like this and then measure the width. I ended up needing a piece about 12 inches long to cover all 3 pieces and brace them so they could combine to be one piece. Now, I had some scrap left over from my toolbox, so I just used that to brace the back, but you could use another fence picket, scrap wood, whatever you have. I just took my 1-inch nails and hooked it to the back. Now, you could easily stop there. I did this in the fall and just used it as a sign blank. You could add a stencil, you could paint it, but I am going to add a little bit of scalloping to it, just like I did all of my other signs, so it's kind of like a matching set. This year, I'm adding different elements to it. So I just traced the one that I had from Christmas, and then I'm using my jigsaw to cut it out. Now, when I placed those braces in the back, I made sure to put them towards the center rather than the ends. So then that way, as I'm cutting, I'm not cutting through the top picket as well as the brace picket. I'm just cutting the top. Then I'm going to use my wrist movement on my power sander to kind of round those edges. During the sanding process, I also learned that I had a couple nail pops, so I would recommend doing a shorter than a 1-inch brad nail if you are using scrap fence pickets to brace it. I went a little nuts with the white stain just because it turned out so pretty. It's very like kind of coastal, and it makes it look like bleach wood, which I really, really love. Then taking that Christmas sign again, I lined it up and drilled a hole in the top directly through the center of the fence pickets so that I could add these C hooks. I ended up just spray painting them black so they would match the hardware I already had, twisting them in, and then it was time to customize. I loved this sign and cut file that I made a couple videos ago with torch paste, so I decided to measure the sign first for the width, and that gave me about a 16-inch measurement, and then I also measured the sides where it was the shortest, so about 14 inches is what I was working with. I cut my stencil to size, and I ended up doing it on some old Cricut vinyl that I thought, okay, I don't really like this that much, so I'm just going to use it as a stencil, and this was a big mistake, you guys. It ended up working out just fine, but honestly, like, the Cricut brand vinyl gives me more headaches than I think it needs to, and I don't know if I just don't get along with it or what, but that's why I like recommending Oracle or other brands because they just work better for me. I went to weed it and it just didn't want to cooperate, so I decided to press on though. So once I made it through the entire weeding process, I stuck it down, and then trying to peel it up, it will work so much better if you just use the Oracle or a stencil material. It's totally the vinyl here, not the process, let me tell you. But once I got everything removed, I was missing the innards of letters, and I was like, I am not about to re-weed this entire thing. So I actually tried something I've never done, and it actually worked out pretty good. I used a paint marker and carefully went in all of the little spaces, and it helped with a lot of the script words that were over the little crevices. I just went over the top, and any of the ones that were missing an innard, I just tried to draw it the best I could. And then I did the large market word as well as a little bit of touch-ups on the other pieces with a disposable makeup sponge. And I was like, this is either going to be a terrible disaster or it's going to be great. And once I got it all on there, I went ahead and peeled it wet, and it actually worked for me. There was a little bit of bleeding, but it actually made it look a little rustic, so I wasn't worried about that. I could have added Mod Podge, but I was worried that that was going to bleed too, so I am happy I went the direction that I did with the paint marker, and this thing is so pretty. I love the color. It definitely is springy, and I want to put a potted container of plants right underneath it, but it's still a little chilly here in Illinois, still a little frosty, so we're going to wait a little bit to put that out there. And also, if you're doing this, make sure to seal it, and also check out that fall fence picket video if you want to learn how to make the whole setup with the post yourself. That's going to do it for this installment of Fence Picket DIYs. Be sure to head down to the comments and let me know either which one was your favorite or which ones you planned to recreate yourself this spring. Also, a huge thank you to Lume for sponsoring this video. Head down to the description for that $5 off coupon. Hit subscribe if you're new so you don't miss a future video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!